Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining this webinar. For the next hour or so, we'll set focus on some of the newsworthy and recent releases from some of the AI providers. We see a lot of disruption, we see a lot of impact on the customer journeys, on digital product strategies, and we want to take you through some of the things that we really think that you should be following. At Framna, we help companies and brands across all sectors integrate and adopt AI into their product strategies and their product operating models, ways of working, and so forth. And to mention a few things, we really set focus on how AI is disrupting the user journey for their customers and how they should adapt and change their product strategies accordingly. We build AI into product in meaningful ways that makes them more easy to use for the users and also drive the outcomes that our brand partners are aiming at creating. And then finally, we help a lot of our brand partners integrate AI into their ways of working for their product teams to drive efficiencies, increase the quality, and so forth. So it's a domain that we're tracking and following very, very closely. But it's also a very big domain. There's lots of things going on. So in order to really make sure that this is a valuable session, we want to focus in on OpenAI specifically and some of the releases that they're coming out with, or have come out with, rather. And to dive even further into that, we want to set focus on apps in ChatGPT, because we think this marks a shift that is going to be super interesting to follow on the way forward. So we're going to share our perspective with you today. So thank you for that. If we look at the speakers that you'll be meeting in the session today, it's going to be myself. I'm Joacim Jeppesen. I'm the CEO of Framna. We're going to have Simon Sterling, who is one of our principal iOS engineers and who's going to really dive into the topic of chat apps rather with you. And then we have Michael Rothstein, who is our business development director, who focuses a lot on working with strategy for several of our partners. Now, the way that we'll take you through this is this agenda. I'll start out with setting a little bit of brief context setting. Then Simon's going to come in and he's going to dive into the apps in ChatGPT. Michael is going to unpack how we see the customer journey or the user journey is changing across the product landscape. And then we'll end with a Q&A session. So for the Q&A, we'll be responding to answers that, or rather to questions that you've set forward. So in the panel on the right, you can type your question and we'll get to it at the end. Now, we have several hundred people on this session, actually, from companies across Europe. And we know many of you are grappling with and considering how to adopt AI, and you're coming across various different challenges. So we thought this could be a good session with a temperature check. And so we have a little poll running as well. You'll get a few questions along the way, and we'll actually show the poll answers in the transitions between these sections. So if you feel you're up for it, participate in the poll, and then you'll see the answers. So without further ado, let me go into the section of setting a little bit of context. Now, there's no doubt that OpenAI has built a powerful consumer brand with ChatGPT. And it's underscored by the staggering number of users that's on the platform or the product on a weekly basis. 800 million users every single week are using ChatGPT. Now, this is even a number from October, because as you can see, the adoption rate is increasing rapidly. And we know that they've communicated from OpenAI's standpoint that they're racing towards the billion by the end of this year. Now, this also means that the AI engines are becoming gravitational forces that's shifting traditional search and also the referral traffic that is across the internet, more broadly speaking. And so Adobe made a piece of research recently where they asked 1,000 people, 800 users, and 200 marketers about various different things about how ChatGPT is used across the customer journey. And 77% of people are saying they're using ChatGPT instead of a search engine or as a search engine, which is then replacing their search engine habits. Now, that's quite interesting, right? People will act and use tools in a way that they've been used to before they really find out how things are changing. But this means that this leads to product discovery and brand discovery. And this is where 36% have said that, in fact, their searches in ChatGPT has led to new products discoveries or brand discoveries. And in fact, this number is 47% when you ask the Gen Z, so the younger generations. It also means, as mentioned, that the referral traffic is changing. So a lot more traffic is now coming through from ChatGPT. And this is a study that is specifically focused on the news sector in the US. And as you can see, the big shift from January to May 24 to 25. And there's no indications that this shift will slow down in any kind of way. Although it's not the mission per se of the AI engines to pass traffic and refer that to the sites, but rather to maintain the traffic and to give the users what they're looking for directly within their platform. And it's now we're talking about OpenAI. Obviously, Google is a player in this space as well with Gemini, but also, of course, them being an entry point to search for years and years. And already 60% of all the searches that are being done today are terminating without the users clicking through to an actual website. And this is even in a situation where Google is only in some cases showing the AI overview. I think I've seen numbers varying between 15 to 20% of searches where this AI overview is shown. And obviously that is intended to keep the users within their platform and not pass them on to the website. Now, let's go through some of these noteworthy releases from OpenAI that we think are quite interesting and is marking this shift towards them really becoming a platform. So the first one to call out is agent mode that came out in July. And the agent mode gives you an opportunity to configure an agent that does actions for you within your browser across different applications. Another one that came out then a little bit later on the other side of the summer, recently in September, is instant checkout, or you can say the ability to support commerce experiences directly within ChatGPT. They've launched a big collaboration with the payment provider Stripe. They've announced collaborations with Shopify, and I'm sure we'll see more come that way. And the intent here is to support the buying experience all the way through to checkout. Then we'll have the next release just a week later was their ChatGPT apps SDK, as they call it, or apps within ChatGPT, as we'll call it in this session, which is what we'll dive much further into. So I'm not going to go far into it. And then, interestingly enough, they launched a browser with Atlas, which some of you may have already tested or tried, or even made your let's say default browser. So these are all interesting releases. Now, for a moment, let's look. If we zoom out, let's look at how AI has their own view of the world, so to speak. So if we look at the bottom row here, obviously we have the infrastructure, we have the chips, we have the racks, we have their data centers, and we have the power supplies or energy supplies, which are obviously enormous at the moment and bound to increase a lot in the future. Then they have the models running on top of it that they're training on this infrastructure. They have their own OpenAI accounts running across it for business users, third-party applications, and consumers as well. You have Atlas built on top of it. We have the grayed out box on devices that they have announced. We'll get back to that a little bit. Nothing there yet, but coming. And then we have Sora, which is mostly the video platform for AI video. And then we have ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT in this case is the entry point to what's on the right, which is third-party applications. So it is within their vision that third-party applications are being powered by the AI that they're making available. Which means already ChatGPT is the gateway to AI capabilities for a lot of for a lot of third-party applications. We see that in the form of various different chatbots, conversational searches, and so forth. But increasingly, as we'll show today, OpenAI will also be the gateway to third-party applications. So that's where the journey in engaging with third-party applications will begin not just inherit the AI capabilities, which we think is super interesting. And that is really what marks that shift from ChatGPT being a product to really becoming a platform. Now, one will say, why are they doing this? Well, it's all about monetization. So OpenAI is investing enormous amounts of money in this infrastructure. So they have CapEx commitments of $1.4 billion, trillion dollars at the moment that they've committed to over the next, let's say, 5 to 6 years. And obviously, they need to drive revenue to support that. And so this is also interesting because they recently announced the restructure of the company, where they from an only nonprofit organization to a for-profit business. Now they're owned by a foundation, which still is going to be nonprofit, but their operating company is now a profit-oriented company. And now they've unblocked any of the previous constructions from a company standpoint that would let's say, prevent them from going all in on profit creation. Now, and they also have high expectations, and outside stakeholders have high expectations for revenue creation. In this case, this is a media outlet in California that made this analysis. So first, they released what are the revenue expectations, and as you can see, the high growth of those in the coming years. This was released in 24, and already in 25, those expectations have been increased significantly. And as you can also see here, they're adding revenue components that will drive revenue from some of these recent releases that they've come out with. Now, my guess will be we'll even see a further increase of that when we do the same assessment in the second half of 2026, because things are going so quickly. So with this release of apps in ChatGPT, the question that is worth answering here is, are we looking at a new App Store moment? Well, time will tell. So we'll see how this plays out. But what we think it is going to be very wise for all of us that are working with digital products, that have digital products in market, to follow this development very, very closely so that we can adapt our approaches and strategies accordingly to benefit from this. So now let's dive into apps in ChatGPT. And for this, I'm going to leave the word to Simon that I'll transition to now.